It's Thursday, September 16th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. COVID-19 vaccination should become a requirement for employment at some point in the tourism industry. That's the view of veteran hotelier and owner of the Crane Resort, Paul Doyle, who revealed that he was finding ways to encourage his staff to take the COVID-19 vaccine. Doyle expressed the view during the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association's Public Relations Committee webinar series on Wednesday under the theme Vaccination in Tourism, Is It a Choice? He argued that having more industry workers vaccinated could lead to greater protection from the virus, increased visitor arrivals, and ultimately overall economic improvement. Meanwhile, President of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, Dr. Linda Williams, believed that individuals should make their own choices on whether to be vaccinated or not. However, she cautioned that the country was now at a stage where the health system could easily be overwhelmed if people were not vaccinated and did not adhere to COVID-19 protocols. In other news, a thriving and productive agricultural sector is important to national food security and is vital to the economic and social development of Barbados. Prime Minister Mia Mottley reiterated that view in a recent address to the Global Commodities Forum, which is the inaugural event for the 15th session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It dealt with issues of food security, water, and the transition to sustainable renewable energy under the theme Strengthening Resilience in Commodity-Dependent Countries.
Barbados, while small, is doing its part. We recognize that a thriving and productive agricultural sector is important to national food security and is vital to the economic and social development of our country. Energy security is also a crucial element of our strategy. For over 40 years, we have exploited the boundless energy from the sun for solar hot water heaters installed on our roofs across many homes and across many businesses. We have now set a goal for 100% of our electricity to be supplied by renewable energy by 2030. We've already made significant strides towards this goal, and at the same time, we have begun the journey to transform our transport sector by facilitating the growth in electric vehicles. These initiatives will move us away from the dependence on fossil fuel and will help us to combat the climate crisis. This matters to us as small island states are among the most vulnerable to climate change, with Barbados and our Caribbean neighbours experiencing the ravages of more frequent and severe hurricanes. And of course, we experience the difficulties of the groundwater crisis and the sargassum.
COVID-19 has severely impacted the mental and physical health of children and adolescents in the Americas. That's according to Director of the Pan American Health Organization, Dr. Carissa Etienne, who has urged countries to take specific measures to protect children, including safe reopening of schools. She made the comments in her latest update on the state of the virus in the Americas.
Last year, there were over 1.5 million COVID-19 cases among children and adolescents reported in this region. 9 months into this year, infections among children and adolescents have reached over 1.9 million. As more adults receive their COVID-19 vaccines, children who are not yet eligible for vaccinations in most countries are also affecting children's health in other ways. Kids across our region are missing out on annual checkups and routine vaccinations because of the widespread disruptions to health. Half of young people have experienced increased stress or anxiety during the pandemic, yet mental health services and support remain out of the reach for many. Sexual and reproductive health services also remain disrupted across more than half of countries in the region, helping to fuel one of the largest jumps in teenage pregnancies that we've seen in more than a decade.
Dr. Etienne emphasized the negative impact of not attending school in person.
Beyond the direct impact on their health, the virus indirectly has consequences and are hindering their growth and their development and jeopardizing their chances at a bright future. Lockdowns and economic disruptions have increased the risk of domestic violence. And for many kids, homes may not be a safe place. Our kids have missed more school days than children in any other region. And despite efforts to leverage virtual classrooms, these can never substitute in person schooling because schools are not only places where children get an education, they are also places where children socialize and can receive mental health support or a nutritious meal. Each day that children go without in person schooling, the higher the likelihood that they drop out and never return to school. For some of the most vulnerable children, particularly for our girls, this can have lasting consequences.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, concerns in St. Lucia over the welfare of members of the police force, as over 150 officers are currently in quarantine for COVID-19. We get more in this report from DBS News.
Prime Minister Philip Pierre explained that anytime someone who tested COVID-19 positive gets arrested, all officers in contact with the individual or those who arrested him must go into quarantine. He noted that approximately 150 police officers are currently in that situation. In expressing empathy for the officers, the Prime Minister is also concerned about how this is affecting the ability of the police force to battle violent crime.
Over 150 policemen are in quarantine. The police are trying their best, but they're stretched. Anytime somebody gets arrested and the person is positive, the entire squad has to go into quarantine.
Public Relations Officer for the Police Welfare Association, Stanislas Albert, is also concerned about the safety of the officers and the productivity of the workforce. He called on officers to take adequate measures to protect themselves from COVID-19 as they execute their duties.
And finally, there's an urgent need for a moratorium on the sale and use of artificial intelligence systems that pose a serious risk to human rights until adequate safeguards are put in place. That's according to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights following a report on artificial intelligence systems. According to Peggy Hicks, who is the Director of Thematic Engagement for the office, the report highlights the aspects of artificial intelligence that contribute to the interference with the right to privacy and other human rights.
The crux of the argument made in the report is simple. Artificial intelligence poses enormous risks for human rights, and despite those implications, it has been designed and deployed across systems critical to our most basic freedoms without proper regulation or oversight. This is not about the risks of AI for human rights in the future. It is about the reality we see today. Without immediate and far-reaching shifts in how we address AI deployment and development, the existing harms will multiply at scale and with speed. And the worst part of it is, we won't even know the extent of the problem because there is so little transparency around artificial intelligence and its use. We call for a moratorium on the sale and use of AI systems that carry a high risk relating to the enjoyment of human rights, unless and until adequate safeguards to protect human rights are in place. The High Commissioner also recommends specifically a moratorium on the use of remote biometric recognition technology in public spaces, given the serious threats to public freedoms associated with such surveillance.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.